Good morning, everyone. Just going to hang on for a second and wait for some more participants to come in. Hope you're well this morning. We've got quite a full packed day today. Okay. Welcome everyone to the second PA Life Live Digital Conference. In the time where we're unable to meet in person, we are delighted to provide you today with a full day of learnings and inspirations. So I'd like to thank everyone that has joined us today. We're going to have a series of panel debates and presentations, and you will have the opportunity throughout the day to ask questions via the chat function or the Q&A box. So if you do have any questions or any comments, just pop them in there, and at the end of each session, I will come back to you and we will go through all those questions with the panelists and the speakers. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have Briefing Line, Clear Cut Venues, First Events, The Goat, Incentivise, Laithwaites Wines, Laura's Confectionery, Meetings House Manchester, Sea Forward, The Training Gateway and Woodhaven. And without their support today, this conference would not have been possible. They will each be presenting their solution pitches throughout the day, and we look forward to them providing us with some inspiration. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Lucy Brazier. She will be discussing the future-proofing your role, how to position yourself for the fourth industrial revolution and beyond. Lucy is one of the world's leading authorities in the administrative profession. As CEO of March & Publishing, specialist publisher of Executive Secretary magazine, Lucy's passion is for the assistant's role to be truly recognised as a career and not just a job. Her formidable training expertise and speaking style has given her the opportunities to train, present and chair in over 45 countries and hundreds of events. So I'm really pleased to welcome Lucy today. Hi, Lucy.
Morning, how lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
So, no problem. It's lovely to have you.
I'm so excited for this today. It looks like a really great lineup.
We've got a very full packed day. Very full packed day today.
Wonderful. So should I begin? Would that be a good
Absolutely. Yep.
Excellent. I'm going to share my screen with everybody then, and then we can get on. I hope you can all see. And I am really, really happy to take questions at the end. So let's just talk a little bit then about the profession and where it's headed. And I know that for a lot of you, especially right now during COVID, you're concerned about what's happening with your careers. And I'm really hoping to allay those fears and to explain to you why actually COVID and the fourth industrial revolution and all the other changes that are happening right now are a huge opportunity for you and not something to be fearful of at all. So we talked a moment ago about me traveling all over the world. Just to add a little bit to that, what do I do? Well, we provide training, but also I am an enormous advocate for you. And so whilst I'm traveling the world, and I think last year was something ridiculous, like 42 countries and about 183 events, I spend an awful lot of time not only talking to assistants globally and finding out what your issues are, but also talking to your executives about why this is not just support anymore, why it's now a career for millions and millions of people across the world, and it isn't just a job. I'm talking to your HR departments about how you can put career progression in place so that you don't all just remain doing basic admin stuff. So before we start, I really want you to ask yourself some questions, and I'm not going to get anybody to share, but I really just wanted to position this and to get you to think a little bit, and it'll set the tone for the rest of the presentation. So my first question is, what are your professional ambitions? Where do you want to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Or are you so busy doing the job that you don't actually ever have time to think about it because you spend so much time firefighting? The second question is, what are your current boundaries and authority? What is it that you are allowed to do without asking anybody else for permission? And if there are things you'd really like to change, if you're honest with yourself, is the reason why that hasn't happened yet because you haven't asked? either because you think that that would mean they would think you're getting above yourself, or because you're just fearful, full stop, as to what they would say. Third question, what are your current strengths? What are you amazing at? When I go and do my 2-day training course, I ask at the beginning, you know how you do when you're doing training, and I say, okay, so you guys, what is your name? Where are you based? What is it that you are amazing at? And most of you say, I'm kind of good at. You're not very good as assistants at talking about the things you're fantastic at. And there are things, you all have these amazing superpowers. And then on the other side of that, what are the things you're rubbish at? What are the things that if they bring them to you and they put them on your desk for you to do, you think, nah, you know, I'm really not so keen on that one. It's not really what I want to be doing, because now is a time for you to be upskilling and to be getting the things in place that you need to make sure you're future-proofing your career. How much do you know about your business? You know, I'm going to stress this several times during this conversation, and there's a great deal of difference between knowing and understanding. And I think most assistants really know a lot about their businesses, but they don't necessarily understand it. And again, during my training, I quite often say, how many of you really understand your businesses? And you say, yes, Lucy, of course I understand my business. And then when we start talking about strategy and what your executives' goals are for the year and what success looks like for them and what their KPIs are and what the business strategy is, even in the next month through COVID, and what the branding is and what marketing messages they're trying to get out, and whether you know what your company's mission statement is, for example, suddenly quite a lot of that falls away. And this is a time for you to really, really gen up and get to a point where you totally understand your business, because that is going to be the future. And then finally, and I think almost the most important, is when was the last time you felt highly motivated? When was the last time you felt highly motivated? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it might be that that was something that you were doing outside of work that made you feel highly motivated. But you know, I saw something quite recently on Facebook, and it was a timeline for your life. And right at the beginning, there's a tiny piece, which is where you first get into going to school, and your parents tell you, if you work really, really hard, then you're going to get an amazing job at the end of it. And right at the other end of it, there is a piece which is retirement. And in the middle, there's this huge piece like this, and that's your working life. So if you're not doing something that makes your heart sing, that motivates you, what's the point? So you really want to make sure that you are putting yourself in a position whereby you are doing something that makes you motivated. Otherwise, what is the point? Change. We don't like it very much, do we? We really don't like it. And the reason that we don't like it is because it makes us feel out of control, and because very often when change happens, it's thrust upon us. It isn't something that we take part in. And especially when executives are making changes, quite often what they will do is that they will be talking at a very high level, and then right at the last minute, they'll tell us the changes they're making. And then we feel panicked and we really don't like it. But you know, if I was to tell you that nothing was going to change again, you would be horrified. So it isn't actually the change that is the problem, it's the speed with which it happens. And if you don't like change, you've got a problem right now, because this whole profession for assistants is a little bit like somebody has taken a pack of playing cards and thrown them up in the air, and we're waiting to see where they land. This is a profession that is in an acute state of change and has been for the last 10 years. And then if you add to that last recession, and we'll talk about that more in a moment, the fact that COVID has just hit and the fourth industrial revolution being midway through, it's not something that's coming, it's something that's here. The change is massive. But the good news is that it's going to be us that creates the future. And so we really want to be looking at that and how we make sure that the future we're creating is what we want it to be. So what I would say, what I would do is to encourage you, if you're hearing things in the next few minutes that you really don't like, to think about yourself like this block of ice. And if you want to change the shape of a block of ice, what do? You melt it, and then you refreeze it. And that takes time. And quite often when I do this presentation, you guys come to me afterwards and you say, you know, I've really had to think about it. And I wasn't happy with it in the beginning, but now I get it, and here are some questions. So make like this block of ice. Just give yourself a chance to think it through. So let's start at the beginning then and look at where the change came 10 years ago. And in the beginning, in the 1940s, it was mainly a male profession. And then the men went off to war and the women stepped up and it became a profession which is predominantly women. In fact, there is no other profession in the world that is so predominantly women. 98% of the profession are women. And it's a fifth of the world's working population. So that is just over 500 million women worldwide and the 2% of men that choose this as a career now. And here you are, you see they're all doing their tea and typing. But actually last downturn, something extraordinary happened. And what happened at that point was that they let go a whole load of assistants right at the beginning of the last recession. And it's worth remembering because COVID actually, the way that they're behaving now, the nearest thing I can equate it to is what happened 10 years ago. They let all the assistants go. And then they realized what an amazing job you did. And they came back and they said, please come back. And at that point, they got rid of the middle management instead. And then they came to you and they said, you know how amazing you are. Is there any way at all that you could possibly step up and do some of the things that they were doing just till we get through this recession? But there's nothing more permanent than temporary. And so now what we have is about 87% of you who are working in events and about 52% of you who are working in HR and a whole load of you working in finance and marketing and all sorts of other things in the business. And many of you say to me, Lucy, you know, I don't think that I'm an assistant anymore because I do so much other stuff. That's the way the role's headed. So that was how it changed back at that point. And a lot of you who love doing events and love being involved in HR or who love being involved in finance, and that's what makes their heart sing, although I don't know why doing finance would make anybody's heart sing. However, if that's what you love, then fantastic, because this gives you opportunities to get into all that stuff. Let me talk about the 4 types of assistants for a second with you then, because it's very distinct in the way that it's being divided up. And I have to tell you that, in fact, we've come across 162 job titles for this marketplace, which is why there are so many problems with the career progression piece. But if you look at the 4 main categories for assistants, I'm going to give them names. The first is an EA, and the EAs are the ones who eat and sleep and drink and breathe the profession. They are the ones that are on call 24/7. They really understand the strategy. They are a proper strategic business partner to their executive because they understand the way the business works, and they step up to make sure that they are providing the services that the executive needs in order to make sure that they are exceptional. But maybe, although it's the most well paid, you're not at a point in your life where you want to be committing yourself 24/7 to doing this work. And therefore, the next level is what I would call a PA. And the PA is somebody who is doing that middle management piece that we were just talking about. So it's doing half your job probably doing administration and the other half doing some of the old jobs that the middle management used to do. Third type of assistant, and this actually can be run alongside the EA and the PA roles, are the ones who are looking after other people. And at a senior level, you find that over 50% of you are managing 2 or more people. And then finally, and this is the role that worries me, the last level are the ones that are the people who are doing reactive tasks. You're not being proactive, you're not stepping up, you're not bothering to find out about your business. If you are doing the same thing twice in exactly the same way, it can be automated. And when you see the headlines in the press, do you remember the one that was in the Wall Street Journal that was all over social media quite recently that was saying the assistant role is vanishing? That is the role that will go, because if you can do something twice in the same way, it can be automated. And the 4th industrial revolution and artificial intelligence is all about replacing those automated roles. But I think it's exciting, those roles that are reactive. But I think that's really exciting because I actually think what it's going to do is to take all the nonsense away. It's going to take all that stuff that you absolutely hate away. For example, I know most of you, if I start talking about minutes, shudder. But there are new things on the market. For example, on Microsoft, there's now Dictate. So you can talk to Dictate and it will just take all your notes in minutes. Or Otter, if you haven't come across Otter yet. I am writing a book on Otter currently. So literally, you just put it in the middle of the room. It records all the minutes. And at the end of it, all you have to do is to allocate the various people to what was said. And after you've done it a couple of times, it will remember the people. So can you see, AI isn't necessarily a thing that is going to be scary or difficult. It will take away some of those tasks that you really don't like. Here we are, the robots are coming and they want your job, but no, not really. I mean, back in the 1950s, when they first introduced electronic typewriters, the papers were full of the fact that they were coming, they were going to take your role, you were going to be made redundant. Not so much, because actually it just meant you could do your job more efficiently and you took on different roles. And the same later on when computers came into play, and they said all the press was full of the fact you were going to be working half days. Not so much, because actually, again, you adapted really well and somebody needed to know how to use the computers and train everybody else up. And it was a tool to get your job done more efficiently. AI is exactly the same thing. This is really interesting. This is from the Future of Jobs report, which is something that was published by the World Economic Forum. And that sounds horrible, horribly weighty. In fact, it's worth going and looking at because there's some really interesting stuff in there and it isn't too bad to wade through. But this is interesting because if you look on this in the top 10 declining jobs, at number 3, you'll see administrative and executive secretaries. Please don't be scared because this is to do with that role I was talking about, the reactive role. Did you know in the States that when the Department of the Bureau of Labor is asked about assistants, and actually we just published an article on this, they only have one category of assistant, one category, and that category is that junior level that is reactive and is performing tasks. The EA role at the highest level, the strategic one, isn't listed anywhere at all. So that's what they're talking about there. And here, look at this. In 2018, 71% of jobs were still done by human beings, but by 2025, it's only going to be 48%. So you want to make sure that you are upskilling yourself. And what in? Look at this. So these are the skills that they're saying by 2022 you're likely to need. And you'll see that actually on that list of skills that are growing, a lot of the stuff there is what you have done. The interesting thing is that the latest report, the 2020 report, is saying that they're going to stop valuing degrees and college education, and they are going to start instead valuing skills. And the skills that they are going to be valuing are things like complex problem solving and critical thinking and emotional intelligence. In fact, a lot of the things that you are amazing at already. So here, it used to be that we really valued facts, and that's what made you a really clever person in the eyes of business. But in the future, it's all going to be about the things that make you human, because now you can ask Siri for the facts, or Google for the facts, or Alexa for the facts. It's going to be things here like creativity and negotiation and persuasion. In fact, all the things that you're amazing at. And look at this. This is a report that we did, a survey we did with Avery a couple of years back, where we talked to all the people who work in offices and we talked to you. And it turned out that assistants have a higher EQ than anybody else in the office by 18%. So if that is one of the key skills that is needed, then you're way ahead, right? And talking about understanding, here, look at this. Someone has to understand how to make the technology work. Someone has to understand how the processes work in the first place in order to automate them. I would go become IT's best friend. Talk to IT about what they've got coming up, what they're going to introduce, and then go learn it so that you are the super user. Be curious. I think the best assistants are always really curious and asking questions so that they can be one step ahead. Don't wait. Be proactive. And remember, YouTube is a really wonderful thing. And don't tell me you don't use it, because I know that whenever they ask you to do anything and you don't know, your first port of call is YouTube to jump on and see how you can learn it. So yes, the robots are coming, but the great thing is that it's going to create opportunities for you. Embrace them. It's going to be amazing. Now let's get on to COVID, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention COVID. And this is where I just moved to. We were meant to go on the 10th of April, and in fact, we only got here mid-August because Spain locked down 2 days after everything sailed off on a truck. But it creates opportunities again, COVID, for assistance. I know my timeline right now is full of a load of you that have been made redundant, and that is really scary. But actually use the opportunity to go away and to upskill in the things that you feel you need to, and get yourself into a position where you are stronger and faster and smarter than other people out there. The great thing is that nobody else in the business does what you do. And many of you are telling me that right now you're in either a situation where your executive is not telling you what you need to do, or where your executive is handing you loads and loads of stuff. Remember what I said right in the beginning, where last recession, they came to you and they said, could you possibly pick this stuff up? Well, we're in the same situation all over again. And the reason we're in this same situation all over again is because it's, they have made people redundant within the business, and they are needing you to pick up the things that they have left behind. This is great, but you don't want to do that with no more remuneration, in the long term anyway, or with no training. So you want to talk to them about that. But if right now you're at home and you're scared and you're thinking, they're not giving me the things that I need to do, then you really need to go and ask. Because what you are amazing at is the process and the procedures and putting all that stuff in place. And the reason that you are so valuable to your executive is because when they come up with ideas, and I'm here to tell you that when I come up with an idea, Matt, my assistant, goes pale because he knows he's going to be the one who has to implement it. That is your strength. I would rather poke pins in my eyes than have to put that process and procedure in place. So embrace it. Have a think about it. Where are the things that you could add value to? Your executive is busy saving the world. They've never done this before. They are trying to work out how they save the company in some cases, how they make sure the revenue continues to come in, and how they keep their staff safe. They haven't got time. It's why when you go and say, what do you need me to do? They say, whatever it is we pay you to do, go do it. Think about the things that you could put in place. Where are there gaps in the procedure? Where are there gaps in the process? How is it all going to work moving forward? Could you put together a briefing document on what other companies are doing? Could you do some research? Could you be looking at things that you have always wanted to do for them? Like those of you that tell me you're not currently allowed to look after their email, or you're not allowed to look after their calendar. Could you take those things away from them and start doing them now, so that you're freeing them up to do the things that their businesses pay them to do? Let me talk to you for a moment about Belbin. And Belbin is a psychometric testing system, for those of you that aren't aware. And what Belbin is it is a system that says that there are 8 different types of person in the ideal team. Now, I love Belbin because what it does is it explains very clearly what the partnership looks like. And there is 3 different types of people that tend to sit in the executive side of things. And there are 3 other different types of people who tend to sit in the assistant side of things. So it explains very clearly how you should be working together. So on the executive side, you have plants and you have shapers and you have resource investigators. And the plants are the ones who are really smart. They're coming up with new products or new systems. But you know, the people who should probably be locked in a high tower and they should be handing things down to people on a piece of paper because they are no good at communicating at all. Or the shapers, who are really autocratic and they like it done their way. It's their way or the highway. And if you give them a sheet with 3 bullet points on it, they're probably bored by the time they get to the 3rd one. And it is absolutely not acceptable to not do things the way they want it to be done. And they upset people all over the place. Or the resource investigators, who are wonderful. They're leading, they're driving things forward. But you're probably chasing after them, saying, come back, you were due in a board meeting 5 minutes ago. And by the way, I'm still waiting for that report that was due 2 weeks ago. So can you see, you've got your executives over that side. Then on the other side, you have your assistants. And your assistants are the ones who are doing teamwork, implementing, and completer finishing. So teamwork is making sure everybody communicates nicely. Everybody's feathers are not ruffled, they're smoothed down, and everybody is happy. The implementers do exactly what it says on the tin, which is that you are making sure that the process and procedure is there when your executive has ideas, and your completer finisher dots the I's and crosses the T's and makes sure that the detail is done, but you really hate delegating anything. So it's really important you understand that your business employs you, not your executive. Okay, your business employs you to make sure that your executive is the best that they can be. So when you get it right, you've got your executive's world over here, you've got the assistant's world over here, and when it meets in the middle, it's magic. It's like 2 sides of the coin. It's like one complete person. And that's why your business employs you. to make sure that your executive is as effective as they can possibly be, and to make sure that their time is being used properly. So I hope you can see that really an assistant is a strategic business partner, not in the old-fashioned sense of the word of being a business partner, but a business partner in terms of you providing the skills that fill the skills gaps that they don't have, so that they can be most effective, so that the business is spending the money on their executive in the best way possible. It's not who you think you are that holds you back, it's who you think you're not. And this is so important. You're consistently coming to me and saying, I'd love to do that, but you know, that stuff only happens to the people that bring money to the bottom line. You're talking so much nonsense, if you'll excuse me for saying so. Let me do the math with you. How much does your executive earn? A lot. Shall we agree a lot? Yes? And how much time do you save them on a weekly basis? Shall we also agree a lot? I suspect that it's somewhere between 30 and 80% of their time that you are saving them. So times one by the other, times their salary by the amount of time you're saving them. And that's what you contribute to the bottom line. And that's before they use that time that you have saved them to come up with exceptional ideas that they had not been able to get to before, or go to meetings or close deals. All that stuff is also what you contribute to the bottom line. And that's before, by the way, you go and do your day job. You go and find meeting rooms at a reduced cost, or flights out of COVID in at a reduced cost, or all those other things that you do that drop to the bottom line. So please don't tell me any more that you don't contribute to the bottom line. What matters most, you know, is how you see yourself. And if you want to be treated as a business person, you have to start behaving like it and thinking like it. This is also really important, and I love this slide, except for this guy's hair, which is desperately 1980s. But the reason I love this slide is because the two of them, you can't tell which one is the assistant and which one is the executive, right? So please remember that they are not the expert at being the assistant, you are. You are the one who knows how to do this job, and that's what your business pays you for. So if they're not allowing you to do things that you should be doing, you have a duty to train them, especially at the moment, how to use you so that they can get on with doing the things that the company pays them to do. Let me give you a quick story which is going to really illustrate that, because I think it's important. This is a guy called Jeff Hoffman, and Jeff Hoffman is a multi-billionaire. He's worth, I think, about 58 billion. He owns Booking.com and Priceline.com. But he speaks on the circuit, and I'm very lucky to have heard him speak a number of times, and he tells a lot of stories. The reason he speaks, by the way, is because his assistant that helped him to found his business, Bobby, was killed in a car crash several years ago, and so he speaks to honour her. But one of the stories that he tells, he says he went to dinner with a friend of his whose name was Carl, and Carl was an eminent heart surgeon. And when he went to dinner with Carl and got there, Carl was doing his calendar, and he said to him, "What are you doing?" And Carl said, "Well, I'm doing my calendar." And he said, "But Carl, aren't you worth $500 an hour?" Now, Jeff says if you don't have an assistant, then you are an assistant. Just think about that for a minute. If you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. So in effect, Carl was paying his assistant $500 an hour to do his calendar. How many things is your executive doing right now that you should be doing for them, which the business is paying them their salary to do? And I'm going to get you to start thinking about yourself, not as a gatekeeper of people, but as a gatekeeper of time, because that is what your business pays you to do. How much is an hour of your executive's time worth? And how much of that hour could you free up for them so that they can spend that hour doing something more effective? Let's look at these really scary stats for a second. So this is your typical 9-hour working day, and in it, you would spend 4 hours in meetings. And look at this, it's 3.2 hours a day that they spend doing email, and that's if they only get 100 emails a day. I get 500 emails a day, and I have to tell you that Matt and I battled forever as to whether he would get my emails or not, until in the end I had 25,000 unread emails, and he said to me quite nicely but firmly, "If you don't give me control of your email, I might have to resign," because he's one of you that will go into apoplexy if he's got 2 emails at the end of the day. So he took all my emails because I didn't want to lose him, and he put them in a file called Beyond Help. And then after that, we put together a really amazing triage system. And if anybody's interested in that, you can write to me afterwards. And my final slide has my email address, and I'm very happy to send that to you. But what that triage system did is that it took down the amount of time that I was spending on email from 58% of my time to 12%. Now just think about that for a second, because the business was spending 58% of my salary on me doing email, and now it only spends 12%. And by the way, if you are wanting to make the business case for any of it, for whether you're taking calendar off them or you're taking email off them or whatever it happens to be, the way to do that is to have a proper business conversation. So if you're going and saying, I'd really like to do your email, it's my job to do your email, please give me your email. I know we've done this conversation before, but the email should be mine. They will just keep saying no. But if you go to them and you say, this woman this morning told me that on average, the executives spend 58% of their time on doing email. That's 58% of your salary that the business is spending on you doing email. And she's got an amazing triage system that will take that down to 12%. And then the company will only be spending 12% of your salary on it. And guess what? It's going to free up so much of your time. Think about it. What could you do with that 46% of your time that you're going to get back? That's the way to have that conversation. Make sense? If, by the way, and I know when I'm training quite often, you guys say to me, I love what you say, but I don't need to hear it. I know it. My executive is the one who needs to hear it. I recorded back in April for Administrative Professionals Day a 20-minute video which is sat on YouTube, which again I can send you a link to if you're interested, and it's to your executives. It's telling them how best to use you. So just that on YouTube, and you could send it to them and say, she mentioned also this morning this video, and I think it might be a really good starting point for us to have a conversation. So from then to now, this is how the assistant gained respect. It used to be that you were reactive, you worked in silos, it was all skills-based, you were subservient, it was all around tasks, you weren't meant to question anything, and it was kind of, that's not my job, that's not really my place. But now assistants are proactive, they really understand the business. It's all about communication. Don't you think it all goes horribly wrong when the communication piece drops out? It's about leadership and collaboration. And if you're not sure whether you're a leader or not, I would say that leadership these days is far more about influence than it is about authority. It's about projects. Most assistants now are doing projects. They're asking questions. How can I be more efficient? How can I add value? How can I make a confident contribution? So I guess what I'm really saying to you is, it's no good anymore to be reactive. If you're waiting for tasks and to be told what to do, then in the future, you're not going to have a job. And you don't want to be reactive like that, because it means you're always firefighting. And that means that you're waiting for direction and for tasks, and it means you have no authority or influence within your business. But if you're proactive and you're thinking about the way that you can drive things forward, then you're going to be actively contributing to the business partnership. You're going to be meeting and understanding and supporting the business strategy. And then you're going to be able to meet and set expectations and do your deadlines properly. So if you get a new executive, you're always going to start at a point where you're subordinate. But if you get that limited involvement and start to get more confident, that means you're going to get more assertive, and then you're going to feel like you can offer ideas and insights. And in the end, you get to a point where there's structured communication, and that's where you become a true business partner to your executive. So to me, here are the two most important questions that you ask yourself moving forward. The first is, where can I take on greater responsibility? Not more work, by the way. I know you have plenty of work, but where are the things within the business that you have always wanted to do and that you want to step up and use this opportunity of COVID to get that done? And the second is, how can I add value and expand the current boundaries of my role? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yes, Lucy, this is great, but how do I ask for that? Because I wanted to do that forever and I don't know how to do that conversation. So what I would suggest is that when you get back to your office, you blame me, okay? And you say to your executive, the keynote speaker yesterday on the conference reminded me that my role is to make you the very best that you can possibly be. And I have some ideas around that. Can we fix a meeting? Okay, now you know what will happen. They'll go, come, talk to me immediately, and it'll all go out of your head. So plan it. Don't go and have that conversation until you've planned exactly what you want to say. And this is my advice. Do 3 things. Choose 3 things that you want to change. They might be small things, they might be big things, it doesn't matter, but no more than 3, because if it's more than 3, you'll confuse them and you'll confuse yourself, okay? And you're not going to be able to make them measurable and you're not going to be able to track them. But you want to do those 3 things immaculately. And if you do them immaculately, then after you've done them, they're going to trust you to do more of the things that you want to do. Step out of your comfort zone. That is where the magic happens. If you're feeling comfortable right now, you're probably in the wrong career. So identify those 3 areas where you think things could be done better. Look at how you measure the value. Think about who you need to influence to make those changes. Is it just your executive, or are you going to have to talk to other people as well? And then work out what the steps are that you're going to need to take in order to make those changes. And then, and only then, book that meeting to see your executive. You know, a shipping port is safe, but that isn't what ships are built to do. And especially moving forwards, you have got the world at your feet. You can do anything you want to do. We can recreate this role to be all the things that we have hoped for the last 10 years that it would become. It's a great opportunity. Don't waste it. And I'm going to leave you with my very favorite quote in the world that says that 20 years from now, you're going to be far more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the things that you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbour, catch the trade wind in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was amazing. I mean, there's lots of food for thought there. And you're right, the world's changed so quickly all of a sudden. There was lots of interesting tips there of how we can adapt. So thank you very much for joining us today. We have got a couple of questions. If anyone else has got any more, please throw them into the chat box and we can ask Lucy now. You've got a lot of thank yous here, and then there was a lot of interest as well for your triage system. So we'll make sure that we get that over to everybody after the session. Oh, someone's just asked, would you mind just popping your contact details up again, Lucy, please?
No problem at all. Let me do that for you.
And we will send them out again after to everybody who's attended today, and with the contact details of the triage system as well. Sharon's just asked here, what was the 3rd type of assistant?
Third type of assistant are the ones who are looking after other assistants as well. So it's over 50% of the senior assistants that are now managing other assistants, all the way from 2 to somebody like Anne Hyatt, who was Chief of Staff at Google, or Debbie Gross at Cisco, who were looking after over 1,000 assistants and managing all their training. And, you know, it's a weird role because most roles within a business belong to a department, if you think about it. You have an accounting department or an engineering department or whatever it happens to be. But because assistants work right the way across the business, you tend to work in silos. And very often when we do these kind of events, and I know you're the same, the assistants afterwards say, oh my word, it's just so good to realise everybody else has the same issues as I do. It's really important that within your businesses, if you have more than a couple of assistants, that you're meeting together regularly to discuss best practice, or to be sharing templates, or to be talking about things that really work for you. Because otherwise everybody's just reinventing the wheel. So more and more businesses are starting to understand that actually, even if you are working horizontally across the business, having some kind of network or creating a department for the assistants is really important.
Lovely. Thank you, Lucy. We've got someone else here from Sarah. Wow, totally inspiring. Lucy, what have you been doing with your time? You would formerly have been traveling. Her boss is now WHF, used to travel a lot, and he's now more busier than when he actually traveled.
Totally, and I'm exactly the same. I mean, it really was, we were 2 weeks out of our big conference in London when everybody went into lockdown. And actually, as I said at the beginning, everything had sailed off on a van. So we had to pivot really quickly, and A, I had to find somewhere to live, so that was quite interesting. But B, we then decided we were going to take our conferences online, very much like you've done. So that's been a whole learning curve, you know, really researching how all that works and making sure that it's the very best that it can possibly be, and tracking down speakers and looking at all the different technologies and doing research into, you know, what we wanted to do. And I haven't stopped. I mean, we did eventually move to Spain about 4 weeks ago now. And literally, I don't think I've ever worked harder, but I love it. You can tell I love it. I'm really passionate about it.
You are definitely. No, thank you so much. We've got another one here. Where are we? How do you remain motivated to elevate yourself and working style to that of a business partner when your salary does not match what you already do?
Oh my word. My thought is that you create the picture as to what it is that you're doing. Okay. So look at your job description, because most job descriptions will be generic for assistants because HR don't understand this role on the whole. So sit and look at your job description, and we've all got that wonderful line at the bottom, haven't we, that says, and anything else we might like to throw at you. But start doing a time audit, start writing down the things that are totally outside of your job description, so that if you are creating things for yourself, like for example, you know, I was saying maybe do a briefing document on something. So if you can see that there's a gap that needs to be filled where your executive's time could be saved because you were doing that, make sure you're writing that down. If you're getting involved in doing, I don't know, sitting in leadership meetings, and I would always say to assistants, actually go to leadership meetings if you possibly can, because you can be your executive's memory and you can watch how other people are reacting, and you can see things they've agreed to so you can keep them to time, and you can also see what other people have agreed to so you can keep the other people to time as well. But you know, if you're stepping up and you're very definitely doing stuff that's off your job description and you're keeping a note of it, then next time you come to have your appraisal, you're able to say, here are the things I stepped up to do, here's the training I've taken, here are the certifications I've got, and you know, I think that's worth a pay rise because I'm now at a different level to where I was when I was employed.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got quite a lot of questions, so I'm just going to sort of select a few, and then maybe what we could do is come back after, just because of timings. We've got another session after.
Yes,
Lisa,
you know, if you want to send me the questions, I'm really happy to answer them, and then you can send them out to everybody if you want, if there's too
that'd
many.
be lovely. Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. We'll try and get a couple more in just before we go. Like Lisa, you've asked about any networks for PAs. I think Lucy and I could probably put our heads together for that one and put some down for you. For this is, yeah.
Let me tell you that actually, if you go to our website, which is still on the screen, there is a tab on there which is for associations, and it has every association listed on it in the world that we've managed to find so far.
Amazing. There we go. And Sophia has said that she's been offered an EA position in Saudi Arabia. She's scared to take the plunge. Is this a good environment for women to succeed?
Do you know, I went and taught in Saudi. I did the whole bit. I had because you have to wear the hijab and the abaya and whatever. But actually, I found it really freeing. And did you know that in Riyadh they have the biggest university for women in the world? I mean, it's a real strange one. I think I would go and do your research and read up. But I really enjoy going to Saudi. I get treated very, very well over there and very respectfully.
Lovely. Thank you, Lucy. Lisa's mentioned, what is the best way to request a pay rise during these difficult times?
Oh dear.
That's a good one.
I think it depends. I would always talk about pay rises in your appraisal when you're talking about all the things you've done right or you know, the things that have done wrong. We actually have another resource where which is in the middle of a campaign we did last year called Ask for Training. And it's a skills analysis, and you fill it in and your executive fills it in, but we spent a long time putting it together to work out every skill that an assistant could possibly want. So it might be good to do that and then sit there and use that as a basis to say, okay, so if you're telling me no right now for a pay rise, then here we've done this skills analysis. Which of these gaps do I need to fill in order to make sure that I do get a pay rise in 6 months' time, for example? So set yourself a time limit, set yourself some measurables, and then go from there. It's a hard time for pay rises for companies. A lot of companies are having a real bad time financially.
Yeah, no, that's good. I might use it myself. Right, we've got time for just quickly one more. Oh, I've lost it now. Sorry.
You're fine.
Is it fairly easy to transition to a chief of staff from being a senior EA?
No, is the short answer on that. They're totally different roles, and actually a lot of businesses are getting it confused. And the reason they're getting it confused is because they are wanting to give promotion to EAs without understanding that the chief of staff role is totally different. And actually, it's a really powerful triumvirate if you get it right, the CEO, the EA, and the chief of staff. So a CEO will be out-facing and going out there and getting the business and going out into the world. Your EA should be managing your executive on a day-to-day basis and making sure they have the information they need. The chief of staff works with the chief executive to make sure that they are doing the things that are going to get the most money into the business. So let me give you a really good example. It could be that somebody would be looking at my travel plan for next year. Okay, now you would have an EA who would do things like booking the travel, putting my agenda together, making sure that I had the hotel bookings, all that side of things. The chief of staff would probably look at my travel plan for last year and work out where I actually made money traveling last year and would advise me which conferences I should be speaking at and which ones I shouldn't in this coming year. But they also look across the business and they see where there are frustrations and they try and fix those. And they are a stunt double for the executive, for the chief executive, when they need to be, in that they're listening to what people are saying. I actually, again, I have a presentation on this if anybody's interested at some point. I can come back and do it for you if you want. It's
that'd be lovely.
Fascinating. It really, I interviewed 200 senior EAs that had transitioned to chief of staff, and pretty much unanimously they were saying nobody understands this role, and they keep promoting EAs and just giving them the job title, and then everybody gets really frustrated because they don't understand where the overlap is or not.
Brilliant. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Lucy, for your time. That's enough. That's all we've got time for, unfortunately, now. I will download the questions, and we've got a lot of comments in there, Lucy, as well, of a lot of people asking for more information. So we'll make sure that we get that all over to you so you can connect with the PAs and the audience after. We're going to have a quick short break now, and then if you join us again at 10:10 for our next session on returning to a normal office. Hopefully we can do that soon. So thank you once again, Lucy, for your time.
Thank you for the invite.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.